sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UENradio.com.
One of them wanted to be the security guy. He claimed he was a security guy.
Where's my applause, Mr. Jarvis? Where'd the applause go? There we go. Threw me off there for a second. Welcome to a prosecutatory version of Security Guy Radio with my co-hostess with the mostest. You're my co-host right now, you know,
okay.
Mr. Jarvis, all right?
Okay. Wait. Am I getting paid for that?
That's another story.
I got him.
Let me check my other suit. This is a very low-budget operation. You know that, right? So... anything going on? Anything exciting? Anything new?
No. It's raining.
Well, that was some serious rain today. That was serious rain.
Yeah, that's big
bad.
for Southern California. You know.
Now we still have to do a what's that conspiracy show?
Oh,
with you.
Yes,
we talked about this off air last week, right? You had some serious conspiracy theory things going on, and I didn't totally disagree with you.
Okay.
In other words, I think they don't do themselves any favor by calling them conspiracy theories.
Yes, we should say critical thinking theories or something.
No, not even a theory, right? So it's got to be. But I mean, some of the things you're talking about, there's probably some basis in something that's factual, right? Mm-hmm. So when you accuse somebody of something, and it's a theory, then it's just an accusation. But what if you just happen to have some actual facts behind it? Wouldn't that be interesting?
It would be.
Now, it just so happens today, just as it always so happens every week, I happen to have somebody in the studio that's going to help us talk about some facts.
Okay.
And I'm very pleased to welcome Karen Schatzle, who is running for the Orange County Superior Court Judge. Yes. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to the show. Now, I want to make sure I get this all correct, all politically correct, all legally correct, right? You're not here representing the DA's office.
Absolutely
You
not.
are a senior deputy district attorney.
Yes.
And we'll talk about that in the capacity of your background, your experience. But this is your political show. And we're talking about your qualifications to run for the office.
It's your political show. It's your political show, but I'm here to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I saw something you posted on LinkedIn or something about running for office, and I thought, well, that's intriguing. You don't normally see people running for offices, for judges. Just in the back of my mind, I tend to see people get appointed, people wind up in a seat, or they run unopposed. Am I wrong about that? Is that more common than what I'm thinking?
No. You're correct. It's common. I've learned a lot in the last, I'd say, 10 months. I knew that there were people that got appointed, and I also knew that people ran for office and ended up getting elected to office. Most often, you run for an open seat, and then you're unopposed, and your qualifications basically get you to the seat.
Yeah. Now,
you remain in office.
as I'm fond of saying, we never let facts get in the way here on Security Guy Radio. But in this case, we want to know all about your background, where you started. It's very interesting. And then we're going to get to some very factual, non-conspiratorial things we're going to talk about, which is some shenanigans going down there in the office with the judge that I was shocked that I read. It's a public information. There's no secrets here. This is all published. It's public.
Not a theory.
Not a theory.
I like that.
And I said, when I read this, I said, well, how can this particular judge be in office? Because the things that happened, you and I would be bounced out in 2 seconds in the public sector, the private sector, whatever. But that's for later, because that's really secondary, because I want to get to your qualifications, where you come from. So tell us about your background. How did you get into, being a DA in the first place? You have a law enforcement background before that.
A little bit, yes. I was actually I went to San Diego State. I didn't really know what I was going to do. I thought I'd go into public relations, and soon learned that I didn't enjoy that topic and was kind of lost. I transferred back from San Diego State to Cal State Fullerton, and while I was at Cal State Fullerton, I met some friends that encouraged me to go into criminal justice, and I enjoyed the subject matter. And while I was still in school, I obtained a position with the Orange County Probation Department. I was a counselor at Juvenile Hall. And I was very idealistic, and I felt like I'm going to save this world one child at a time. Love them, care about them, show interest in them, and then this whole world would be a better place. And I soon found out that was not going to be the case, especially as one individual. And some of my idealism started to go out the window, and the reality began to set in.
Now, why is that? Because I was a police officer. I started out very young, and I'm still trying to save the world. Actually, I'm trying to save my radio show more. But the world, I really believed that I was contributing and helping things. In other words, I'm not going to be able to fix everything. I can't solve all the problems, but I'm not standing on the corner doing nothing and not participating. So what discouraged you about that system? I mean, I know that's probably the most difficult system we have as a juveniles because there's different rights afforded to kids, different objectives to rehabilitate and stuff. What got you discouraged by it?
What led me to be discouraged was a lack of collective camaraderie, I guess, to actually want to help and not just incarcerate. I think that if we are able to reach our youth sooner, that we may be able to help them, may be able to rehabilitate them. But the reality is that we are underfunded. And just to be clear, I'm not making any representations. I haven't been a probation officer for many years. But back when I was a probation officer, it led to a situation where there was too much for a small amount of people to handle. And just as an example, my very first night, I was working as a night counselor. And basically, in that regard, I was making sure the kids that I was supervising were safe. But my job that evening was to go to the hospital, and I had a young child, a young girl who had given birth, and it was her second child. She did not want the child, so she had taken the child, wrapped it in cellophane, and put the child in a trash can. The child did not make it, but I went to the hospital and held her hand while she was medically treated for what had happened to her. And it was a very eye-opening experience for me. One, I couldn't even begin to conceptualize it at that point. I think I was 20 years old. To think that you could even wrap your child and discard it in that fashion. And two, that some of her reasons were that her first child was a son, and she knew that the female wouldn't be wanted, and she didn't want to have to explain.
Oh, boy. That's wow.
Yes, it was very eye-opening. And so there was things of that nature that occurred while I worked. I met some very young children that had been through horrible situations, either environmental or through their families or poverty or being affluent and having everything given to them. So it's not any one area that gets put in a box. It's not that neat. You can't wrap it up in a bow. So there's a lot of things.
In other words, you can't resolve things as easily as you just robbed a store and I prosecuted you to go into jail.
Right.
Simpler.
Yep, much simpler.
A lot of gray areas in those things. Well, anybody that can last in that area for any length of time is admirable because it's a tough profession. So after that, where did you go?
Well, I promoted quickly. I'm bilingual. My parents are from Argentina, so speaking Spanish. Spanish was actually my first language, so it allowed me to promote rather quickly. So I became a probation officer and went out in the field. I worked a variety of different assignments with the probation department. I worked work furlough. I worked where I actually went out and interviewed low risk offenders that were incarcerated and kind of did an analysis and see if they should be released back into the work furlough program. I got to drive the county van and pick them up from their facility.
Oh, that's interesting. All right.
Take them to the program and make sure they got jobs and reintegrated back to society. I wrote probation sentences for the sentencing reports for the court. Supervised narcotic offenders, gang offenders, and was part of a coalition during that time where I was part of the gang suppression unit, where I was actually post-certified, and I worked with both the Orange Police Department and Santa Ana Police Department. We worked the field at night.
You know, these capacities, and I'm rusty on this stuff, these are police officers, positions. There are different classifications, right? It's not a city cop, a probation cop. There's different classifications. So they were sworn positions, right?
I was a probation officer that was post-certified, but my partners were sworn police officers. So I actually worked outside of the Santa Ana Police Department. That was where my office was. I'd go there.
Oh, okay.
They were my partners. I had a caseload of people that were on probation that we were able to monitor, make sure they were they were in compliance with the terms and conditions.
How many people did you have to take care of?
Oh, my goodness. That was so long ago. I've had anywhere between 70 to 90 people on my caseload. And
is that common, 90? You have to keep track of 90 people that are out of jail and make sure they're behaving.
And make sure they're behaving.
That's a lot of work.
That's a lot of work. Well, not you have to assume that you're hoping that they're going to be doing what they're told. It's a court-ordered system, and they're agreeing to be on probation.
Right.
So there are terms and conditions that they agree to be on, and hopefully we can reintegrate them back into society, keep them safe, keep us safe, that type of thing.
What did you learn from that experience? Did that system work any better than the first one?
You know, it was very sad for me because I saw a lot of children that thought they were much bigger than they were. And unfortunately, when you're 12 and you're carrying a gun and you have a lot of tattoos and you think that you're not going to be messed with, and then you see that same 12-year-old dead on the street about 2 hours later, it's still a 12-year-old that's dead on the street.
Yeah.
You know, the attitude's gone, but it's still the same
Well, in the
body.
probation department, were you still assigned to juvenile, that sort of probation, or is it adults now?
Both. It was
both, okay.
It was a combined caseload.
Yeah.
It was a combined caseload, and we saw a lot of things. One of my first call-outs when I was with a partner was an attempt suicide. It wasn't just a gang case. You go to calls that they call you to, even though it isn't gang suppression. So it was a attempt suicide where a woman had tried to take her life, and it was very bloody and ugly and sad. So I'd say if I had to characterize the entire time I was with the probation department, it was sad. It was sad to see what's happening in our society.
Now, what motivates you then to switch hats and become an attorney? That's a whole different career path.
A whole different. Well, when I was part of that coalition, I did work with the probation department, social services, the district attorney's office, the police agencies, FBI. It was almost a pilot program at the time, many years ago, and it was effective. It was effective, and it worked, and it started to reduce the amount of gang violence we had, and we were able to reintegrate.
It's like in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes,
I was
it
a
was.
cop in the 80s. There was a lot of gang violence, and you really don't hear about it like you used to. I mean, that was the crime.
It was.
Yeah.
It was a crime. What happened was I got married. Well, I was very young. I graduated college. I got married, and my husband at the time went into the police academy. I had time on my hands, and so I thought I'd go back to school. And it seemed like the logical process for me to go to law school, especially being part of these different facets of the probation department. I had some health problems at the same time when I first got admitted to law school. So it came to a point where they thought that I perhaps wouldn't be able to have children. So I got married, started law school, and then I had some medical problems. And it's very different when you think, oh, I may not want children, or I'll wait to have children, than to have somebody tell you you're never going to have children.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
at the point in time that they cleared me, I was in my first semester of law school, and I decided that I was going to have a child, and that my body was telling me that I wasn't going to be able to wait. So my husband at the time and I decided, okay. So I was working full-time, going to law school at night, and I got pregnant. I had 2 children while in law school. And was
2?
2.
Wow.
2 children in law school, working full-time, and was pregnant with my 3rd child when I sat for and took and passed the bar exam on my first attempt. So it was a busy time for me.
That's fabulous. And then what did you do after you passed the bar? Was it right to a DA's office job?
No, I would have liked that to have occurred, but at the time, the county had gone into bankruptcy. So although I was interviewed and I was placed on a list, I had just missed the cutoff. So I was kind of on a holding pattern, to say. So I decided, okay, am I just going to wait? I went to law school. What am I going to do? I'm working in the gang unit. And I decided to apply for the FBI. So I went through the selection process with the FBI, and I still remember my recruiter's name, Michael Hilliard. I doubt that very much he's still with the FBI. He was a wonderful man who said that although I would have hated him during the process, that once I was seeing him in the halls, I'd end up liking him. And I did go through the selection process, and I was offered a position, and I received my letter that I was scheduled to go to Quantico. It was a very difficult process and something that I was proud to have passed and gotten to that point in the process. During that same time, although I was on the waiting list to be hired with the district attorney's office, I had wrapped my mind around actually going through the academy for the FBI.
Right.
And I was offered a job with the district attorney's office. And after discussing the matter with my family, my children were very small, I chose to go with the DA's office and start my career with them. And I initially had planned on going into the DA's office and working in the gang unit, but it doesn't work that way immediately. You have to kind of learn the process, and it's very different from going from a probation officer to prosecuting people. So you go through a process to where you it gets your experience, and you move up into what we call vertical units.
Let's talk about the DA's office. There's a lot of mystery around DAs, and they got a couple of TV shows, and, B.D. Wong walks into SVU and says, I'm going to make this guy psychological commitment, and the DA says no, and that's what we know about it, right? But it's a pretty complex organization, and DAs, district attorneys, are law enforcement officers, right?
Well, we have one DA.
You're not cops, but that's your role. You're in that branch of the government.
I see myself as a team with law enforcement, yes.
Yeah.
But to be clear, I'm a deputy DA. I'm a senior deputy DA, and we have one elected official. He is the DA.
Well, that's another thing I made a mistake, right? They're always changing that everybody's a DA. It's not. That's like not everybody's a sheriff. You're a deputy sheriff.
Correct.
There's one sheriff, there's one DA, and deputies, yeah. Mm-hmm. And you're senior because you've been there a long time?
Yes, not just because I've been there a long time, but because you go through a process where you prosecute a certain type of cases, certain quantity of cases, and you have a proven conviction rate and where they feel that you've adequately represented the people to where you deserve the merit of being promoted or called a senior deputy.
And you've worked in the Orange County DA's office this whole time?
Yes.
Okay. And how many cases have you prosecuted? What do you think?
Oh, I don't know. I've handled thousands of cases.
Thousands, right? Okay.
Prosecuted, the last time I counted, and I know this because I applied to take my exam to become a criminal law expert, which was in, I think, 2013. And they had asked me to go back and count at that time when I submitted my application. And there were certain cases that they wanted counted. So I know for sure, at a minimum, through adjudication, actually trials with juries, at least 86. That's a number I'm comfortable saying because I know I've counted in regard to what they wanted from me. So I'm assuming it's more than that because I didn't count certain types of cases.
Well, and people think that everything that comes before the DA's office gets in a court in front of a judge, and most stuff doesn't, right? It's plea bargained, it's whatever you want to call it, or they make a deal, or they agree to things.
They call it negotiated settlements.
That's a nice way to say it.
And it is. It's a negotiated settlement. Not everything that gets filed, I think it's a misconception when you say it doesn't go in front of a judge because it does. Even negotiated pleas
it's
go
in
before
the process. Yeah, okay,
yes.
right.
So it's not like a defense
Not a
attorney.
trial, though.
Right. Trials are different.
Now, how do DAs pick trials? In other words, the DA say, Chuck, I got your case here about this dog that got shot, and I can't win this. I just can't win it. Help me win it. What can I do? There's a that's a perception that DAs want to pick cases that are going to win. They're going to win because that looks better than picking all the cases and you lose, right? Is there any truth to that?
I think that it's all an individual approach to how you look at a case. All of us are different people. And our elected official, I believe, tries to select the best people for the job. And I think we work with some phenomenal individuals.
So you have discretion. If you're assigned a case, you have some discretion to decide whether you're going forward or not.
Yes.
Let's say, absent some political thing, it gets dropped in your lap, and then you get told what to do. That happens everywhere, right? Any business has that. But you are the person that is the case manager, so to speak. You handle it, and you say, "Listen, I got enough evidence. I think we can fairly prosecute this person. I think we're not stretching it. This is, this makes sense." So that's justice to me. When people make decisions that are discretionary, because as a police officer, you have discretion.
Yes.
The chief can't walk in and say, "I don't want you to arrest that guy." He can't do that. And if he does, he's in trouble, right?
Right.
And if we didn't have that system, then it would be run by somebody that tells everybody what to do, and that's too political. So I'm glad to hear that there is discretion in this.
We have an ethical responsibility, although we work for our elected official. My personal opinion is that I work for the people of the county. So
right.
I have an obligation to them to file things that I think ethically can be proven by the evidence. And even though in my gut it tells me they're guilty, if I don't think I can prove it, I have an ethical responsibility to not file that case. So that's my own personal imposition. I'd like to think that all of us kind of have that same moral compass.
Now, what type of criminal cases do you do? Or do DAs just kind of do all kinds of cases? I mean, it just depends on what comes across their desk. Do you have a specialty?
Well, I have a specialty just based on where I landed in the office, but I didn't go in thinking I'd have a specialty. I prosecuted numerous misdemeanors. I prosecuted juvenile cases. I prosecuted what we call general felonies, which are robberies, thefts, carjackings, your run-of-the-mill type of felony crime. And then when you satisfactorily complete a tour doing those types of general felonies, then you start handling some of the more serious cases and what is referred to as vertical prosecution. And I, in my experience, what it does is you work with an agency and you prosecute cases, and it is set up sort of to where you have drug cases, narcotic cases, homicide cases, gang cases. And I spent most of my career in prosecuting physical child abuse cases and sexual assault cases.
Now that's interesting, because you left that. I'm serious, right? You left it in the juvenile division because it's a tough racket.
It's tough.
Did you feel you had more control now as a DA, that you could do more work that way?
I don't know that I ever really thought about it so much. I had a passion for the victims that I was representing and wanting to do right by them, and I felt a connection. I feel God puts you in places for certain reasons, and that's kind of what happened to me.
It's so tough. I had a case once when I was a rookie where I get to a house and this baby has third-degree burns on their hands, and the wife's not talking. She's scared. And I'm talking to the husband. I'm going, what happened? Nobody's talking. And we separate them, and the wife says, they were baking, the door's open. Sometimes you leave the double door open. And apparently the baby kept kind of like bumping into it or touching it, and the dad flipped, and he took the baby's hands and held them down on the oven to teach the baby a lesson and gave the baby third-degree burns. And I got to tell you, I don't know if there's statute of limitations on this, but I will tell you that I was ready to C-clamp this guy. That's where you go like this, by the way, Mr. Drivers. That's called a C-clamp. And drag him through, the keyhole in the door and take him outside and beat the crap out of him. I lost it. And my partner had to say, hey, dude, calm down. So we went to the hospital. He still wasn't under arrest, right? Because I'm no doctor to say that guy did it on purpose. That's how the system works. It's kind of crazy, right? We get to the hospital, we talk to the doctor. The doctor says, yeah, there's no way a baby is going to hold his hands down when he's being burned. He's going to fall down. He's going to do what it was. And I don't think, what's walking age? 2? Toddlers? 2-ish. Yeah,
2-ish.
something like that, right? There's no way the baby
cheese.
the baby didn't have the skill set and the brain to say, I'm going to go touch that soap. Very difficult cases. I had child molestation cases. I kind of bumbled a car as a police officer in patrol.
Yes.
And mom calls up and says, hey, there's a weird guy that lives in the back house. And that turned into he was wrapping dollar bills around his John Thomas and having the kids come over and take the dollar bill off. And the mom had no idea this was going on for 3 years. Right? And that guy tried to skedaddle to Mexico, and we caught him going out the back door. And I always felt good, and I even got notes from some of those kids when they grew up saying thanks for handling my case and stuff. But it's stuff you can't.
It doesn't go away.
You can't get out of your head. It's really so. It's admirable that you can do that for so long and prosecute that, because it's just I don't know. It's just I don't have the mental capacity to do it. I just get too angry about it.
Well, I think even being a police officer, you've seen things. You tend to compartmentalize things, and gives you a greater appreciation for life and the good things in life.
Is there justice in this area? Mr. Jarvis, my headphone just exploded. What happened there?
Did you not hear me?
Was I being too vocal? I'm sorry. All right. Is there justice in this area when he gets to court? I mean, the cops do their job. The cops scoop you up. They put you in jail. They write a report, and then your job is to go to the next step. And do you feel that there's justice in that area that you worked in with the sex crimes?
I believe in our system. I like to believe that we're all a team and we do the best to seek justice. That's the only way I could do my job, is to believe in the system and believe that we do our best to get justice. Justice isn't always winning. No,
that's true. It's not, right.
So,
but that never bothered me. Do you get bothered if you lose a case?
It depends on the case. If I lose a case that I know a bad person is getting released, it's a bad day, But you figure for me, when I was in the sex unit, on a good day, the likelihood is that I put somebody away for hundreds of years to life.
Oh, really? Pretty severe on that
Pretty
stuff.
severe. And on a bad day, somebody really bad goes free.
Right.
So
and they're gonna do it again, and hopefully you're gonna get them the second time. And
right.
Yes, there'll be another victim, but I think if you're patient, they're gonna come back around. You're gonna get them. No reason to cheat.
There's no reason to cheat.
No reason to cheat. And talk about cheating. We see this. We see this in police reports nowadays. We see this in politics, and I just can't get my head around
I have a
Why
very
people do
hard
that?
time believing that even that happens. I know I may be naive, even though I've been in the system as long as I have. But I heard it does happen. You know, it happens. People changing police reports, people not providing information, or
I worked for 3 agencies for 13 years, I think. I honestly can't say that I saw that sort of thing.
it's never come across my desk.
Maybe it's California because, maybe back east if you're making 30,000 years a cop and not 100 grand, maybe you hear about it's different. But I think California has a really high integrity as far as law enforcement in general.
I would
DA's
agree
office,
with that.
things like that,
I would agree with that. I don't know any of my colleagues that it would shock me to learn that they did something negative or in that regard.
Yeah.
And I have a very high regard for the people I work with. I think they're amazing individuals. They've sacrificed their lives to be a public servant, and they do the best to seek justice for the victims and the families of the people in our community.
So you have a great background.
I think so.
I keep threatening my friends that I'm going to run for office, and nobody wants that, by the way, Travis. All right?
I wonder why.
No, because if I get elected, there's going to be some changes. All right, I'm telling you right now. All right, I'm not a politician. All right,
Nor am I.
I get things done. Right, and that's a whole different Megillah. So, what's motivated you to want to be a judge? That's a big step, is it?
It's a huge step.
Right.
It's a huge step.
Tell me about the process. What do you if you want to be a judge? What do you need to do? I think you're qualified, with this background, but that's not really the qualifiers to be a judge. What are the actual qualifications to be a judge?
Well, to pull papers is how they call it. Pull papers to be a judge. At the time you pull your papers, you're supposed to have been a practicing lawyer for 10 years. You don't technically have to be a prosecutor or a criminal defense attorney, but you do have to be an active practicing lawyer, civil, family law, corporate, contract. There's all sorts of lawyers for 10 years before you can actually pull papers to either ask for appointment or run for election.
What is more common, being appointed or being elected?
And honestly, I didn't really know until recently when I took on this endeavor that typically it seems that people will ask for appointment depending on whether the governor is Republican or Democrat and what you identify yourself to be. So if I were Republican and there was a Republican governor and I wanted to be a judge, it might be an easier route to go that way. You do go through some rigorous background checks through the Jenny Commission, which is the Judicial Nomination Examination Review Board. And so your colleagues get called and judges get spoken with to determine whether or not the people in the community that you practice would consider you to have the correct temperament and the right credentials to be able to.
I didn't know they do background checks.
I don't call them background checks, but they are background checks.
Look at those lawyers, Jarvis. They have different words for all these things, isn't it? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay.
Makes me feel like I committed a crime there.
It's a background check. I mean, come on, All right. So now is that only for the elected people to get that? Say it again. It's not a background check. What is it? What's the word? Not a background
It's just
check?
a review.
A review.
It just checks the credentials and makes sure we're appointing the right people that are
Yeah, but
gonna
if you're
be
asking the
empowered.
people in the community whether you think,
Well, it's an anonymous approach so that
I
people
know.
can actually
be honest.
and
Sure.
say, hey, you know what? This person is a great friend of mine. I don't think she'd be that great of a judge. Or,
Yeah, they do that for police officers too, and
Right.
DA investigation things. Okay.
Right.
So are those reviews for people that are running for office or for appointments or for both?
No, those are for appointments.
Only for appointments.
Only for appointments.
Now, you don't have a review for
An election.
Now, that's interesting.
No, I think the community reviews you.
Well,
for
but I mean,
election.
listen, we got some shenanigans going on right now in our national election, right? I mean,
Always
nobody's
shenanigans.
doing background checks there, obviously, or
Well,
something's
it's just
going
out there
on.
for you to see. I don't think you need to
Yeah,
look
it's a
in the
show.
background.
All right. So that makes me a little discouraged, frankly, that the elected people don't go through some kind of real scrutiny. I mean, at least you should be able to qualify and do some kind of check and say, listen, he's not a convicted. I mean, when I was a cop, it used to say in the penal code, and maybe you can help me with this. I used to stand on the grinder, they called it, and recite these penal code sections. And one of them was, you're precluded from holding a public office if you're a convicted felon.
True.
Well, but we still see convicted felons that are in office. What's going on with that? Am I wrong? What's happening?
I don't know anything about that. I from where I sit, what I see are people that get to power and maybe abuse their position,
Right.
and then get to remain in power. I don't.
No. So if it's okay to get elected and then get convicted, and then you can stay. But you can't get in there if you're convicted to begin with. It's just weird.
I don't know that you get to stay if you're convicted either. I think that
Who's the guy that was running guns up there in California, who was against the gun laws in California? Lee? That's one of our state senators. I'm adamantly against guns. We need gun control. And he had a whole arms business on the side.
Really?
No, seriously. No conspiracy. It's not a theory. Go look it up.
Okay.
Google it, as they say.
What is his name?
Last name was Lee. I can't remember his first name. But yeah, he's still going through the whole process and stuff.
So is he convicted or still, because we have this innocent until proven guilty.
Oh, that little thing.
Yep.
Annoying candor of law. All right, so what makes you want to be a judge? You've had this interesting background, so I know there's got to be some story there.
There is a story.
So what's the story?
There's a story. As
long as you think we've covered your background enough.
Long as you think you've covered my background, to me...
Well, I don't have to do a review, technically. So as long as if I was doing a review, it would be different. Let's just say, have I missed something in your background? I mean, you got a really good background. You're qualified here. And
you know what I think is missing, and this is, I guess, what my approach is. I really don't think that being an attorney for 10 years is what makes you a good or a bad judge. I think
that's a good point. I mean, I could be a divorce attorney for 10 years, and in theory, I can run for office.
Yes.
Or get appointed. No, that's all right.
So I really believe that what makes an individual a good judge is life experience, what you're exposed to, your work ethic, how you structure your life, your ability to juggle things and be able to make right decisions, be able to make a decision in a moment and be confident with that decision, and just understanding people. Because there's going to be people that come into a courtroom that aren't familiar with our system, and it's scary. It's scary. I've seen people, even first-time police officers that testify are
Oh, yeah, it's very nerve-wracking. I remember the first time I went into court with the jury.
It's nerve-wracking.
It's nerve-wracking, yeah.
And it's very ominous. You walk in, and regardless of the reason why you're in court, if it's a ticket or if it's a divorce or some sort of civil litigation, with me, I deal with life and liberty. We're talking about locking people up. So it's
a very serious responsibility.
It's an extremely serious
and I agree with you. I'm not feeling confident in somebody who was a divorce attorney or a traffic ticket commissioner for 10 years to say, I'm going to now make decisions about crimes. I think you have to have some kind of background in that to understand that. To understand I have discretion as a judge, as a police officer does, right, as a DA does. And there's the black letter law. There's the spirit of the law. There's all those things. And I'm not sure you can get that from just being, a lawyer for contracts or something.
For 10 years.
Yeah. It's interesting you should say that. I wasn't I just assumed that people that were sitting in a criminal court as a judge were criminal court attorneys, but not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Just like if I were to be elected, they could put me into a civil caseload, and I've never done civil.
No,
but
that's
you learn
true.
it and you go.
Yeah.
So it's not that people are beyond the capacity of learning how to do their job, just as when you were a rookie, you learned how to do your job. When I was a new DA, I learned how to prosecute cases, and you kind of work your way up. But I think it's the human element that makes it more appropriate or makes someone feel more comfortable in having that individual make the call. Because as a judge, you're basically listening to both sides. You're open. You're following the law. And although the law isn't fluid because it's black and white, you do have factual scenarios where you have to take things into consideration when you're applying the black letter law to the certain situations. So it's somebody who needs to be open-minded, somebody who's willing to listen, someone who doesn't have an ego. That's okay with being told, you know what, maybe you made a mistake. Can you revisit this area? Can you read this law? And you don't have the ego to say, hey, I'm the judge and this is a call I'm making, but you're willing to listen to both sides and take a human approach to what's going on in your courtroom.
And the judge has to follow the law, too.
Yes.
The judge can't say, I don't want to sentence you to 10 years. Well, it says you have to. And we see this in the news sometimes.
Yes, we do.
Especially back east where some judge says, I'm giving him 6 months for child molestation when the statute says it's 10 years. What are you doing? And people don't get called on that. And I always wondered why somebody doesn't come up and say, no. Oh, let's do something about that. Probably for the same reason that corruption happens in any organization, whether it's law enforcement, Macy's, 20th Century Fox, or whatever. It's because people get complacent. They're fearful for their job. They're not going to make us think about it and raise a hue and cry that something's going on here. But if you don't say no at the first onset of these things, this is where it gets carried away. So we talked, of course, before the show about what's going on. We want to make sure we're being factual here and being careful what we say and honest about what we say. And you have a really good motivation for wanting to be a judge. So tell me what that is, because I heard this story and I read the facts and did some fact checks, and as I called you back, I said, this isn't even possible. Tell me what's going on. So I'm going to let you talk about that because you have the facts and you have the information that motivates you to do this. So let us know what's going on with that.
I do have the facts. The facts, where I said I worked, I still do work for the district attorney. And
not here in that capacity now. We're just talking about running for election, right?
And I was watching what was going on in our system. And I used to always say I was going to write a book about this. I think I'm just living out my book rather than writing it. But you see things that happen in court. And I had a colleague that I actually supported when he ran for election, and he's currently a judge, Scott Steiner. And I worked with him, and he ran for judge. And he ran in the traditional, unopposed fashion where there was a sitting judge who was going to retire, and she left the bench and endorsed Scott for her seat. And nobody opposed him because you have a respected judge who's leaving her position, who is endorsing a district attorney who has the endorsement of his elected official. People don't want to just come out and waste money and try to oppose somebody.
So that's how the system works in the DA's office.
Lots of times that's the way it works.
Now, is this common to most DA's offices around the country, or is this a unique thing to LA and Orange County, or?
I couldn't comment to that. I could only comment to what I see and what I've learned, and that it is typical that you run for an open seat because it costs a lot of money to run for office, more money than I ever knew.
Oh, so it's, in a way, it's interesting. It's almost like, let's face it, everything's a business.
It is.
The DA's office is a business. The police department's a business. And one of the things about the business is you got to have people working in positions, filling seats. It just so happens that the DA's office, sometimes those are elected. But to facilitate that process, what you're saying is they create some small window and say, okay, I'm going to retire in 3 days, and so I'm nominating you. And then nobody has time to say, wait a minute, I want to run?
I want to run.
Is that kind of how it works?
Somehow, it's a little bit like that because you can make a decision to run for a seat. For example, currently we have in our county 5 contested judicial seats. There were several people at the time that I decided to run against Scott Steiner, which was last April. I picked his seat because I knew his term was coming up. I knew what happened, and we'll get into that. Yeah. And I was waiting for somebody to come out against him. I could not believe that somebody wasn't going to come out against him.
In other words, run against him.
Run against him.
Okay, all right.
And I was hoping it would be somebody from our office. We have a lot of very, very experienced lawyers, some better than me, that would do phenomenal on the bench. And so I was waiting to see if they would do that. We had a couple of people come out and say they were running for open seats without challenging somebody that I felt should have been challenged. And I know I've learned recently.
And you, by the way, just so we're clear, you could have run for an open seat.
Yes.
And you could have been a judge fairly easily. Am I wrong?
If
you weren't opposed.
If I wasn't opposed, I could have been a judge fairly easily. Yes.
Okay, that's fair.
I personally believe I have a good reputation in my community, among the bench, among my opponents, and my colleagues.
But unopposed is unopposed.
Unopposed is unopposed, right? And what's interesting is if you don't oppose a judge that's up for his term for re-election, is they don't have to pay a filing fee. They don't have to pay for a ballot statement. A ballot statement costs close to $20,000 just to file a ballot statement. The filing fee was $2,000. So if a judge comes up for re-election and they're not challenged, none of those costs get paid. I've learned that there's an unwritten rule, and I understand it, that you don't challenge an incumbent judge. I've been told that on many occasions recently. And I thought about it long and hard, and I thought, okay, well, wait, so we aren't going to challenge an incumbent judge based on unwritten rules at the cost of the written rules.
That's called politics. You're learning this, right? This is what's called.
I'm trying not to learn this, but it is. And I've been told, you need to play the game. I don't want to play a game. This is my life. It's who I am. It's my life. It's not about me so much as it is our community and the people we represent and the oath that we take. I took an oath as a prosecutor. The judges take an oath to follow certain judicial canons. There's 6 of them.
Yeah.
And there's things that because you put yourself in a position of scrutiny, and I personally believe that when you become a judge, you're not above the law. You are subject to the law, but you live your life under a different set of rules, under a different scrutiny.
It's different. It's different being a police officer, too. You just can't have those pals you went surfing with and smoking pot. You just can't do it.
You can't do it.
It's not how you do it anymore, right? It doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't give the public a good sense of confidence in our system.
Well, and it doesn't give you the ability to fairly interpret law, look at law, make judgment calls and things like that. You can if you're part of the problem, the group. And it's not an arrogant thing. It's not a moral, ethical thing. It's just the right thing to do. That's the bottom line, you know.
Well, it's the right thing to do if you're in that position. You know, I think morality is altogether different. I'm not going to pass moral judgment.
That's right.
on anybody.
It's the law, and if we follow the law, we don't have to worry about moral judgment because the law is very close to those things.
Right. And if you want to live your life in a certain way, then you don't take the job as a judge.
Right.
You just don't do that.
What a perfect segue into what you're going to tell us about what happened here.
Well, what happened here was that there was an investigation. Scott Steiner, during the time he was a judge, he was elected. He walked onto the bench, and he was also an adjunct professor at Chapman University.
Was he teaching law? Or
He was teaching character evidence, I believe.
Oh,
it's a little bit ironic.
It is.
So he was active in that aspect, and what he admitted to, what I'm privy to, and what I know he admitted to differ a little bit. But what I want to discuss are just the facts because there's no reason for me to say anything other than what he's admitted to doing.
Right. In other words, so this is called a censor.
It's a censure
It's a public
document,
right? Okay.
based on the Commission on Judicial Performance, and it's an annual report that comes out.
And people can go pick that up and buy it. There's no secrets here. There's no inside baseball.
Nope.
It's not something you're going to go pick up at the newsstand or the library or something.
It's not behind People magazine. No.
Exactly, but it's available. Right?
It is.
So we're not telling secrets out of school. All right.
No, we're not. And at the time that he was censured, it was in the media. There was a lot of to do about it, and quite an embarrassment, I'm sure, for his family. He had sex. Well, what he admitted to doing was having sex with at least 2 different women in his chambers on multiple occasions, both during and after work hours.
Separate. It's hard to get this stuff straight. Not 2 women at the same time.
No.
Separate occasions. Okay, all right.
Yes.
Just want to make the record straight. All
2
right.
different women on different occasions,
All right.
on multiple occasions.
In
both
chambers.
In chambers, both during and after when the court hours were open and when the courts were closed.
But I read, just to be specific, he didn't say, let's take a recess and then go into his chambers. It wasn't a court in session, but it was... Court
It was
open.
8 to 5.
8 to 5, but it wasn't like he wasn't sitting on a case and said, I'll be right back. And then,
Right,
well,
correct.
okay,
correct.
just to be fair, right?
Just to
All
be
right.
fair, yes.
All right. Not that that's any better, but I'm just saying.
No. I don't
Right.
want to misrepresent
Yeah.
anything here. No, so that occurred. He was accused of that, and it was investigated. It was reported to the district attorney's office, and then it was referred over to the sheriff's department. Our local sheriff's department investigated it, turned it over to the attorney general's office.
Now, why did the sheriff look at it? For a possible criminal thing, like it wasn't consensual or something? Or
I couldn't tell you. There's a lot of information that's sealed, but whenever there's an investigation, it would go to whatever jurisdiction. So
it might not have been a criminal thing. It's just that's the investigative branch. Makes sense.
it's an investigative branch, right? So there may not have been anything criminal.
And these ladies were former law students of his?
Yes.
Okay.
They were former law students of his, and he offered, on at least with one of the individuals, to get her a job with the district attorney's office, and he wrote a letter of recommendation on her behalf and actually made phone calls to try and get this individual a job.
So I read this report, and it's called Censor, and it's violations of canons, I'm sorry, which is like the rules of the court or your ethics and things like that.
Code of ethics for judges, yes.
So there were violation 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it were. So the first one was this having sex in chambers. The second one you're talking about now is a second finding that he admitted to.
Yes.
And so we're not saying he was alleged. He signed a piece of paper, and I saw the signature. It said, yep, I did that. I tried to get my girlfriend some jobs in the DA's office.
Yes.
Right? Okay. So
He did.
Same
And
girlfriends from the chambers or different ones?
I don't know. There's 2 victims, or women. I don't want to call them victims, but there's 2 women. Typically, just based on my background, I know that any type of sexual impropriety when you're dealing with females, you refer to them as Jane Doe just to kind of protect their anonymity.
Yeah,
so, I'm comfortable saying that there's 2 different women that were the subject of this censure, that he admitted to having sex with them at different times on different occasions, and that he admitted to writing a letter of recommendation. And when that one individual was not passed to the second phase of the hiring process, made a phone call to the district attorney's office, upset because his, I guess, quote in the censure was, "I guess a letter from a judge doesn't mean anything anymore."
No, throwing the weight around kind of thing.
Yeah, something to that regard. So and that's what he was censured for. And so from where I sat, there's different things. He in the community, his judicial temperament, how he treated people, bench officers, people who appeared before him. There had been things that were said that were just very disheartening when somebody takes the bench and starts treating people poorly.
Well, I think he assigned cases improperly. There's some rules for assigning cases, and he didn't disqualify himself when he should have. And
yes.
A friend of his came before him, that kind of stuff, right?
Yes.
So
and the presiding judge has rules. If you're going to declare, if you have a conflict of interest, for instance, if I was elected to the bench and one of my best friends came in to appear before me, it would be inappropriate for me to keep that case, because I'm not going to be able to be unbiased when my best friend's telling me my guy's innocent. Or
no matter what you say, you try. By the way, the best intentions, if there's no impropriety,
right,
by definition, you're not fair.
Right.
You just can't be.
You can't be.
Yeah.
And there's procedures and policies in place where it has to go back to the presiding judge to be reassigned to a different judge. And then I believe one of the things that he admitted to was bypassing the presiding judge and sending it to yet another one of his friends to handle the case.
Now, what you're describing is a normal business day at a studio, all right? I've seen some of this stuff, casting couch. It's way beyond this kind of thing, right? And everything's great, and you get the lawsuits from it and things like that. But what you also have is people get fired immediately for these things. They get fired when there's an allegation. They get fired when there's not an official finding, but let's get you another job somewhere. And you get sued. You get sued a lot for these things, right? Mm-hmm. So my perplexion was, if I walked up and shook a woman's hand and said "nice dress," I'm worried about getting sued. Okay,
I should be.
Yeah, nowadays,
as you should,
right?
Right?
That's that kind of thing, right? So why is this different in a judicial setting? What protects people from their job? So in the private sector, there's really no protection. As a police officer, you have rights afforded you, labor rights that say you have to ask questions a certain way, and you have to do a certain investigation, and that's all to protect people from unfairly firing people. Mm-hmm. And private sector lawyers protect employees by following certain legal processes and things. So most of the time when these kind of cases come up, I think there's a fair shake and there's a good investigation usually, and people don't tend to just throw an allegation if it's wobbly or questionable. You got to have something solid, right? Mm-hmm. This seems pretty solid. It seems pretty solid that the guy signs to it and admits it in lieu of what? In lieu of what? In lieu of getting fired? In lieu of a criminal charge? I don't know exactly, but why does he get a pass on this?
I don't know why he gets a pass on this, which is why I'm running for judge. But I believe when I was reading the censure, what he admitted to was what had been discovered in an early investigation.
Yeah, it mentioned an earlier case at the college. Is that what I read?
I don't know. It says it's based on an early investigation. And in reading the censure, it doesn't appear that there was any further investigation done. So
there was another case that this one alludes to and mentions, and then that case stopped, whatever that case was, and now he's admitting to these things while he's a judge.
Well, he's a judge, and he admits to what's contained in the censure, and it appears that once he made the admissions, the investigation was over.
I see.
I don't know if they had completed their investigation, but I believe that the censure indicates that you know, he
Can I see
admitted.
that?
Yes, please.
Now, I know people, Jarvis, think that I sit here and read Action Comics when I'm interviewing people or pretending these are actual notes, but they are actually something sometimes. So here's the book. Can we see that on camera? Let me see. Tell me if that's a good shot. See that? Does that look good?
Yeah.
All right. See, all right. So that's where people can pick this up and read this for themselves. And, you know, I got insurance, but I certainly don't want to misrepresent anything. And we talked about this, and I'm going to be very straightforward on it. And it's all right there. So I think this is darn good motivation to run for a judge, right?
It is.
Yeah, and you're not really a political person. You really never thought about politics.
I don't like politics.
Yeah.
I don't like what it means. I don't like the things that people say or the games that people play and the fear that's involved. I have many colleagues of mine who secretly support me, but that are afraid of retaliation.
Yeah, that's what happens. I mean, listen, I'm all for anything people want to do in their own time, as long as it's not against the law. I'm not passing any moral judgments on this. Listen, sex in the workplace happens all over the place, right?
So they say.
I know. I just think that the judge in the chambers has to be viewed differently. I think that creates an automatic conflict that you're not respecting the position, and I just think that's problematic.
Well, when you
now his
look at
dad, his dad is somebody, right? His dad is a council person with the Orange County or something.
His dad was also a judge. He was on the board of supervisors in the 80s, I believe.
Yeah.
I think he's a very well-respected member of the community. From what I've been told, I don't know his father. I'm not opposing his father. I can only imagine that his father is extremely disappointed and embarrassed, as is his family. And it's not my position to further embarrass them.
No, and same thing. I'm not passing any moral judgment here. You know, you want to go have sex in your office at the studio and you're a big executive and everybody likes it. That's great. That's not the same thing. And there's no moral judgment on this one. This is just something that shouldn't be done from a legal point of view, an ethical point of view. It just seems odd to me. So this really upped your Irish, so to speak, and got you motivated to do this.
Yes, it did, especially when I read the censure, because when you look at what it says, and it's a quote straight from there, it reflects an utter disrespect for the dignity and decorum of the court and is seriously at odds with a judge's duty to avoid conduct that it tarnishes the esteem of the judicial office in the public's eye.
That's strong language. Now,
It is.
have you seen other cases where judges are removed, and for what cause? Or is it very difficult to remove a judge that's elected? Is it because it's an elected office that makes it difficult, or what is it?
No, I don't think it's difficult. I know two other situations where two judges have been removed during the time I've been a DA.
And when we say removed, if you're elected, that has to be a pretty serious process with a lot of, following all the rules and things, right? Okay.
You follow your judicial canons.
Yeah.
I know I have a very high respect for one specific individual who was removed, and I won't say his name, but he was removed, and he had been on the bench for over 20 years, and he was an amazing judge, did his best to follow the law, did things the correct way. He wasn't real favorable to one side or the other, and being a judge was his life, and he was removed for, I believe, fixing somebody's ticket, which is...
Oh, I remember that case. Yeah.
Maybe you do.
No, I remember that. No, that was a big deal,
It was a big deal.
right? Because, that happens.
It does.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And usually what happens at the police department is we don't call it fixing a ticket. We call it, hey, I'm not supposed to park here. I didn't think I was going to park there. And there's a little discretion back in the day where policemen could, dismiss a ticket. You can't do that now.
Nope, you cannot.
Right? Now that's against the law.
It is.
But we did have discretion to cancel tickets, right? And this guy, when he did it, I think those laws had come into place, and it's kind of like, no,
Well, I
can't
don't
do it
even
anymore.
know
That's
that
weird.
I don't even know that he dismissed it. I'm not familiar with the facts. I think it was something where he called it up and paid it on behalf of his friend or whoever.
Well, he
it was.
wasn't punching two girls' tickets in his chamber, okay? So that's a little minor compared to what we just read in this thing here.
Yes.
That's what I'm thinking. All right, we got about 5 minutes. I want you to give me your best pitch on why we should elect you, right? And I know that puts you on the spot, makes you uncomfortable because
It
you're not a
does.
politician.
I'm not a politician.
But let's speak from your heart about it. I want to hear why you think you're going to make a difference here, because I think you are. You've convinced me.
Well, thank you.
So let's give you your 5 minutes to do your
say
pitch.
this. Well, I think I'm going to make a difference because I'm willing to stand up for what's right, no matter how difficult it is, no matter how hard my life becomes or how much scrutiny I'm under. I'm willing to stand up for what's right. I don't believe I'm a perfect person, but I believe that I'm ready to live my life in a way that would bring honor to the bench as opposed to disrepute and embarrassment. I don't anticipate making policy from the bench. I intend to follow the law, apply the law, listen to both sides and not prejudge the facts, and bring some respect and dignity back to a seat that I believe has been tarnished, and live by example.
And to be very specific, you're talking about one seat,
Yes,
one person.
one person.
And I have friends that work in Orange County DA's office, retired cops that do things, and LA DA's office, and those are two great law enforcement agencies.
Amazing.
And there's very little weird crap like this that you ever hear about that goes on. So I think this is just an anomaly, and it's something very specific.
Yes.
Now, I think you ought to call Fox and CNN, Jarvis, because that was the shortest speech of anybody running for office we've ever heard. And they might have missed it. We might have to play it twice or something like that. All right.
I don't do very well at selling myself.
Well, that's a difficult thing. I mean, I've looked at people in business, and when I was in the private sector, we're trying to sell things, right? And everybody's trying to sell something. I mean, somebody that's not selling you a widget, they're trying to sell you what? That they're good, that they're nice, or something like that. And I think the most effective people are people that just are themselves. You seem to be yourself. I mean, I talked to you yesterday before the show. I talked to you today. I don't really know you, but you impress me as being genuine.
I hope so.
Yeah, and I think that's the whole thing. So give us your website.
Schatzle for OCJudge.com, FOR, not the number 4. And follow me. Follow me.
We have to. Jarvis, help her out here. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter,
Follow me on
LinkedIn, YouTube.
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
That's right.
Snapchat,
What do you have for
Periscope?
social media, by the way?
I couldn't even tell you. Facebook. I have somebody else doing that for me.
See, I know you're not a politician now if you don't know all that stuff.
I don't know. I know I'm on Facebook. I know that I'm on Twitter. I know that there's a social media presence for me that's being handled by people who care about me that are volunteering. This is a very costly endeavor for me. So if anybody really wants to help me, I would need donations.
Oh, okay. How do we send you donations?
At SchatzleForOCJudge.com. You just click on the donate button and you can donate 5, 10, 15, 25. There's no limits for Judge.
Hold on.
Any amount of money.
We got a whole new show. There's no limits?
No. There's no limits.
All right, we got to do another show on that one.
Yeah,
So
no
for president, for governor, whatever.
There's limits. But
What do you mean no? You mean no, like none? Like I can give you $100 million?
yes. Would you like to do that?
I would like to do that. Would you get my checkbook, please? I would like to do that.
That's it. Race is over.
Well, you have quite a challenge because your opponent is very well politically connected, and that's usually connected to
Money.
money and cash registers and things. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, we wish you luck. And
Thank you.
for the record, Judge Steiner, where's my camera right there? You're welcome to come in and talk to us. All right.
I'll come back and talk with him too at the same time.
Oh, well, that's a great idea. There you go. We're throwing down the gauntlet, Judge. You want to come in and have a debate or something, talk about this? We're absolutely
I'm open.
free to do that. Right, and I don't have to because I'm not part of some regulation thing, but I'm offering that because I think it's the right thing to do. But that'd be very interesting. Would you like to see that show, Jarvis?
I would love to see that.
All right, that'd be good.
That would be great.
Karen, thanks so much.
Thank you.
I think is this your first media appearance?
Yes, it is.
I think you did well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You did very well. Very good. All right, Mr. Jarvis, take us out. I think we got a minute early, but it's been a long day. It's been 4 shows today. Well, wait a minute. I got to say goodbye first. All right. See you next week on Security Guy Radio. Thanks for tuning in. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Pinterest, the girl site, Tumblr, and SoundCloud. We'll see you next Monday on Security Guy Radio.